wonderful morning. Such a sky you never did see. Who will tie it up with a ribbon and put it in a box for me, so I could see it at my leisure whenever things go wrong, and I would keep it as a treasure to last my whole life long. Who will buy this wonderful feeling? I'm so high, I swear I could fly. Me, oh my, I don't want to lose it. There must be someone who would keep the sky so blue. There must be someone who will buy. So for those of you who are not musical theater enthusiasts, that is from the musical Oliver, which is based on Charles Dickens' book, Oliver Twist, of course. So when I was in 7th grade, I played Oliver in our school's production of that musical. And during every performance, there would be a moment when I got taken up in the amazing bliss of it. That must be the feeling that you have when you tell people you've been bitten by the bug. When I sang this song, it was like the lyrics and my soul mixed together into some kind of magic concoction of sheer love and joy. Because I certainly would give a whole lot to capture that feeling in a box and take it out and look at it and have that feeling transport me to that place. And yes, the memory of my whole experience being on stage, and in fact, experiences on stage that came afterwards, have been a treasure. And I think they will last my whole life long, as the song says. But we all know that it is never possible to capture those kinds of moments in a box and tie it with a ribbon. However hard we try to hold on to them or recreate them, those moments are fleeting and meant to be so. But they are, in a way, treasures that last our whole lives long. Those are the moments that sustain us in times that are not so wonderful, when the sky doesn't feel so blue. This desire to capture the moment must have been in the hearts of Peter and James and John on that mountain the night that Jesus glowed, and Moses was there, and Elijah was there, and the word of God poured forth from the dark cloud of presence. Peter must have wanted to capture that moment so badly. Here was Jesus chatting with Moses and Elijah. For Peter, the two prophets who represent his whole faith, representative of the whole entire body of the law and the prophets. Moses, who went up a similar mountain to a similar dark cloud and brought down what we call the 10 Commandments, but was really so much more, was a blueprint for how to be God's people. And Elijah, that prophet that was taken up into a cloud on a chariot of fire, that is the one that is the harbinger of the Messiah. And for Peter, these are two prophets that do represent his whole faith, two figures that loom large in the Jewish understanding of what and who the people of God do and are. Here they were, chatting with Jesus, their own teacher. Perhaps there were times when Peter and the other disciples felt that there was a little bit of Moses and a little bit of Elijah in Jesus as he taught and healed. But here was proof of it. Whatever Jesus was doing, and Peter didn't always get it, whatever Jesus was doing was in sync with these important prophets. And Peter tried to find a way to capture that moment forever, didn't he? Let us build 3 tents as dwellings, one for Jesus, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. But it never works that way, does it? Or perhaps maybe it doesn't work the way we want it to. A permanent record in a box of this feeling, this experience that has taken us up so completely. I have to wonder, however, if years later this experience was the one in Peter's heart as he fulfilled Jesus' command to spread the good news of God to the ends of the earth. Perhaps he drew on this memory of being taken up into the love of God, and that took him through difficult times and doubts and struggles. As much as we can't recreate those moments for ourselves, we can certainly be changed by them, can't we? We can even be transfigured, if I may be so bold. Now, that word transfigured is theology speak for the glowing, changed figure of Jesus. But to understand what happened here, I think we have to look at the disciples who were taken up by the changed, glowing figure of their teacher. They were drawn to the warm wonder of the glow of the love of God. They were taken up into a rare glimpse of something very simple and yet so profound. The story of God's love for humanity revealed through the stories of Moses and Elijah. And this gospel episode finds the mantle of that faith history passed to Jesus. And who do you think Jesus passes that mantle to? To the disciples, and ultimately to us. The past, present, future of God's love for us are momentarily joined in a glowing reality. Who would not be taken up by that? From here on, Jesus becomes the center of his own story. Up until now, he holds that private message, "This is my beloved with whom I am well pleased," whispered in the ear at his baptism, close to his heart. He lives it through teaching and healing, but silences those who recognize it, and will continue to do so until the beloved of God is crucified and rises up. In this story, we enter the eye of the storm. After this, the reality of the transfiguration of the story itself is made manifest more and more publicly. After Peter suggests that they build some tents there, things on the mountain shift. The sky clouds over and gets dark. This is a traditional way of expressing the presence of the transcendent God. I used to think that Peter had said something really bad, so a storm whipped up. But Peter just expressed a truly human yearning. The cloud is God's presence, even God's blessing. From the cloud, the voice of God thunders out for all to hear, "Here is my beloved, listen." In other words, the answers are not ultimately found on the mountain, but where Jesus will lead us after we are changed through this experience. You know, I've always heard that voice as something like, "Here is my beloved, listen to him." And I was just thinking, what a ridiculous thing that is. Maybe it is better to think of God smiling and delighted. I mean, truth be told, how many of you talk about your beloved with grim severity? I mean, we all get angry at the people we love, but that's not really how we introduce them. "This is my spouse, the love of my life. Here is a picture of my beloved children. I'm so proud of my beloved grandson." No, we smile, don't we, when we say these things about those we love? In fact, we might even glow. When we are taken up by that kind of love, we might even glimpse the presence of God. In that presence we glow, just as Jesus glowed when God proclaimed him beloved. When we are in the delightful, delighted presence of God, we are energized for service to others. The bright light of the transfiguration affirms life, and the promise of the continued presence of God in the human story. This glow becomes the beam that shines ahead into Lent as we march ever closer to the cross. And it reminds us of the love that ultimately illuminates hope. It is the light that promises that God is here, that God is knowable, that God seeks relationship with each one of us. And that is the treasure that lasts our whole life long and beyond. How do we get taken up into the love of God? Does this happen after we die? It is a lovely image, and I know that many of us live in that hope. But does being taken up into the love of God only happen when we die? That I'm not so sure of. Perhaps this is something that can happen every day if we are just willing to watch for it. Maybe to be taken up in the love of God, we have to stop looking up and start looking around us at each other. To really understand the mountain, we have to be willing to follow Jesus back down to the valley. Even Jesus knew they couldn't stay there forever. And he turned and walked down the path that led back to the valley. He needed to complete his work. He needed to enter into his own darkness in order to reemerge as the Christ light of the world. And Peter, James, and John would be destined to spread that light to an even wider world than the human Jesus. And so Peter, James, and John followed him down that mountain, perhaps each clutching a box tied with a ribbon, a memory of the beacon that would sustain them throughout their whole life long and beyond. I have a box too. It is here. And I think I'm going to go along with them. Would you like to come?